What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, we made it to the middle of the week or so before the Switch 2 talk and headlines started to fly around all over the place, and most recently, it has to do with a certain feature being backwards compatibility, with some concerns that from a certain developer that definitely got the internet going back and forth over it. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony and how it looks like they're setting up for another big-time acquisition, and we're also going to be taking a look at Halo Infinite and 343, as it appears that they're finally getting on track. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Front Mission 2 Remake, as we now have a release date for it. This from Forever Entertainment, and of course they did just the Front Mission remake so far, and it was already impressive that we got that, as well as the second one, even though the first one, not the best in terms of critical reception, but we can see the trailer here for Front Mission 2 Remake. It is releasing June 12th on the Nintendo Switch. They do have a list of features here, which includes improved loading speed, support for many new languages, a new free camera option so you can zoom in during gameplay, new coloring and camouflage options, modern in-game effects, and renewed soundtrack. So I do like that Square is partnering with Forever Entertainment to go back and get some of these more niche classic RPGs like Front Mission, and the fact that they're working up to Front Mission 3, which is the one that I'm more familiar with compared to the first two that were on the Super Famicom, is exciting when we get to that point, but still, nonetheless, I'm sure there are many people who have not experienced Front Mission 1 or 2, and it's nice that we have them remade heading to the Switch. Again, that is June 12th for the second one. The first one is available now. Also, we have seen Microsoft do some weird things with the Xbox brand that's not video game related, like the Xbox Series mini fridge that apparently you're not supposed to keep plugged in because while it's a fridge, it's not necessarily the best thing to do with it, which is use it as a fridge. We've also seen hoodies for your controller, and now you can see the latest one that's being passed around currently, and I wouldn't have normally believed that being an Xbox Series S toaster, which you can see here. I would have thought, okay, this is just a fan mock-up. They're playing around with it. It's just supposed to be funny. But I can't write it off. It's going around now. People are saying that it appears to be an actual thing. All right, sure, an Xbox Series S toaster. I guess the one nice thing is they are going to be releasing some games, and they just did Hi-Fi Rush, and we have, of course, Redfall and the new Minecraft spinoff, and eventually Forza and Starfield. So the meme around them making all of this other stuff like apparel for your controllers but not games technically can go away then, but sure, there you go. An Xbox Series S toaster. I guess we'll keep an eye out for the official announcement for the new appliance you can have for your house. Oh, and speaking of Microsoft with accessories, we had previously covered this since it leaked out a bit early, and that was a new Xbox Series controller, which you can see it here. It's now official, that being the Velocity Green Xbox controller. And I mean, it looks fine. It's just a green front-facing Series controller with the black D-pad and bumpers and triggers there. The white backing. I do like the buttons though, as they do have that shade of green for each letter. But to me, at this point, we have almost all of the different colors, I think, for the Xbox Series. So sure, why not throw green in there? And we do have the design lab, so you can go in and just kind of customize it how you want anyway. But just another controller, I guess, to add to the collection for the Xbox Series. Certainly something that Microsoft doesn't really have any kind of shortage on. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and their next generation platform that most of us are assuming will be launching sometime next year, but there have been talks and speculation that they could even push it out for the holiday 2023, so basically in the next 8 or 9 months or so. But one of the biggest talking points around, well, the visual fidelity and what kind of a boost it will get in terms of power and the new SoC is the idea of backwards compatibility and being able to play your current Switch games on the new platform that we all assume is just going to be a souped-up Switch, essentially. Well, there are some talks recently, which we can take a look at some of the headlines. For example, this one here from VGC. Switch's successor faces backwards compatibility challenges. Developer suggests. So we have a developer out there bringing up the fact that it's not going to be a simple process, I guess, for the backwards compatibility. We have the gamer, Nintendo Switch successor may not be fully backwards compatible. And then we have My Nintendo News saying MVG thinks Switch backwards compatibility won't be easy to add in the next console. That's right, modern vintage gamer, you know him from the Spawncast. He's out there making these videos, getting himself into some trouble, which certainly a lot of people going back and forth on this one on different forums, on Twitter, and MVG obviously is gonna, his word is gonna carry more weight because he's very familiar with the Switch and other platforms, as he's a developer to create these games for the PlayStation, Xbox, the Switch. He knows what he's doing, and when he brings these things up in terms of, okay, these Switch games playing on Nintendo's next platform, and here are the roadblocks, yeah, you definitely want to pay attention and listen and see what points he's made. And he made many of them, but the thing that people are taking away from the video, and maybe they're just looking at the title or whatnot, but people seem to think he's saying it's not going to happen, it's impossible. Really, all he's doing is going over the potential issues that Nintendo and Nvidia could face, and even how they could kind of figure it out. One, for example, has to do with maybe them having hardware that is compatible from the X1, just kind of dropped into the newer platform for Nintendo, we'll say the Switch 2, and that way, if you put a Switch game in from this current generation, it'll call to that hardware and play it just like it would on the current Switch. The other way could be software emulation or nothing at all, and that's the one that seems to be really kicking up a big fuss online, is what if Nintendo launched the next platform and did not have backwards compatibility with your current Switch lineup? Now, for me, I'm still on the side of Nintendo and Nvidia are going to figure it out, and there will be backwards compatibility to some degree. It's not going to be 100%, and the reason I say that is because the Switch OLED is not 100% compatible with all Switch titles. Same with the Switch Lite. The OLED doesn't work with Labo, the Switch Lite doesn't work with Mario Party. Couple of examples right off the top of my head. So this newer platform from Nintendo, even if it looks just like a Switch OLED, there are probably going to be games that it has a hard time with, just because Nintendo being Nintendo and being weird with some of their accessories and ideas to go along with those games. And the reason I believe that is because Nintendo would make a colossal misstep by not having backwards compatibility for what's shaping up to be their most successful system ever launched. I know people look to the hardware numbers and the DS, sure, that's above it, but when it comes to pure software, the Switch is the best-selling system they've ever had, and it's going to cross that 1 billion mark, which is something Nintendo has never been able to do. If that's the case, yeah, you think they want to bring that software forward because they've made a lot of, I'm sure, even new customers because of those games. And you want to keep in mind that Nintendo's not in this alone. Nvidia has a lot to gain from this next system with Nintendo. I mean, think about this new customer they've found with Nintendo for a Tegra line that has just never found its footing with consumers before this, with their Shield TVs and trying to get the Tegra chips in the tablets and phones, and it's never necessarily caught on like they'd want. All of a sudden, here's Nintendo selling over 124 million, probably 130 to 135 million before it's all said and done, of their Tegra chips for an Nvidia. That's massive. So while I think it's going to be mostly Nvidia figuring this out alongside of Nintendo, I think they're going to get it done and make sure you have backwards compatibility. But the one wild card here, and why I can't definitively say it will have backwards compatibility, is because Nintendo tends to be weird with their systems, and while they figured out backwards compatibility for the vast majority of transitions from one generation to the other, hey, they like to do weird stuff. And it's possible that the next thing that shows up isn't a Switch. And yeah, that would be weird, but again, Nintendo likes to be creative at times to a fault, and I am curious if they try to play it safe and just follow up on what they've had with the Switch hybrid model and more or less perfect it, or just completely go off into left field with something new. But one way or the other, hopefully we know by the end of this year, and Nintendo maybe lining up a first half of 2024 release, trying to maybe mimic what they did with the Switch since it found such great success releasing in that time slot. I assume we would know probably before the holiday season even what's going on for their next platform. And who knows, maybe they release some weird model for the Switch, like a Switch Lite OLED, or maybe they just overclock the current chip and play around with the Switch configuration and put out their new 2DS XL model for the Switch alongside of a new platform launching in 2024. But I guess we'll find out by the end of this year if we have something new from Nintendo to look forward to so they can kick off the next generation in 2024. Next up, let's talk about Sony and how it appears they're not done with their acquisitions just yet. On the gaming side, Bungie was massive for them, which took over $3 billion to get done, as they also had a lot of incentives for the different employees there and developers, trying to keep them on board at the company, since the biggest reason most of us think that they bought Bungie was for their expertise when it comes to live service games, which is something they're making a big push for right now, and hopefully we see at least some of the results of that in a showcase later on this year, maybe over the summer. But it appears they still have about $5 billion to spend, whether it's on developers, other forms of entertainment. We can see this posted up. This was over on Twisted Voxel, saying, in response to a question regarding an update on the 2 trillion yen in Sony Group Corporation's investment budget, Totoki discussed that the company had spent nearly 1.3 trillion yen by the end of last year. He added that in 2023, Sony is looking to spend the remaining 700 billion yen on further strategic investments as planned. This amount roughly translates to $5 billion US, which obviously, when we look at Sony, we think of PlayStation as that's like their big moneymaker for the most part. There are years where they'll do better in other areas, but Sony and PlayStation, that's been very consistent for them throughout really the end of the PS3 generation and completely through the PS4 and to start the PS5. But they still make other acquisitions outside of PlayStation. Think of Crunchyroll. That's a more recent example that did cost them over $1 billion. So while they have $5 billion seemingly to still invest by the end of 2023, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go out and buy a video game developer or publisher. They could even make investments like they did with Epic, where they have a smaller stake in a company like what we have with Unreal Engine, because they understand really the effect that that engine has had on gaming and probably will continue to have into the future, as more and more of these in-house engines are kind of shelved in favor of a more familiar, like industry-wide engine with Unreal. I did see some rumors and talks around potential acquisition targets, and one was Take-Two. I have no idea how at this current time, especially with the amount they have allotted to acquire maybe a developer or studio or something, Take-Two would fit into that. Take-Two would cost much more than $5 billion. So I'm not 100% sure on how that was brought up, but people have said Capcom, Square Enix. I don't really think Capcom, I mean, look at Capcom now. I don't think they want to be purchased. Capcom is on an absolute roll currently, and they are up significantly from where they were before Monster Hunter World. So think back a decade ago for Capcom. They were struggling a bit, and that would have been the time to really buy them. Not now necessarily. So I'm thinking if Sony does buy a studio or a developer in gaming, or it'd probably be a smaller one, maybe more of a support studio. And when it comes to entertainment outside of it, anything really. I mean, they can look around at all kinds of stuff for their camera and sensor division, their movie stuff. So while $5 billion, I'm sure a lot of people on the gaming side are thinking about ways for them to spend it, there's a lot that Sony could be looking towards. Next up, let's talk about some Game Pass games heading to the service for the month of March, which we can see this post up over on news.xbox.com. Nice little card at the top there. And yes, we have Guilty Gear Strive. That is available right now, cloud, console, and PC. A really, really good entry, though, for Game Pass. Guilty Gear Strive, people who are obviously into Guilty Gear absolutely love this game, and I will say, visually speaking, it is striking. I'm not a huge fighting game guy, but even I look at this and I go, wow, okay, that looks really, really good. Probably wouldn't get into it myself, but if people are playing it, I wouldn't mind checking it out just because of how it visually looks. Then moving up to March 9th, they have Dead Space 2 and 3 listed. That's just for cloud, though, through EA Play. So, hey, if you're someone who enjoys playing through the cloud, maybe it's through your Samsung TV or whatnot, you can technically start playing 2 and 3 right now. You can technically start playing Dead Space 2 and 3 starting tomorrow, March 9th. Moving up to March 14th, Valheim is going into game preview on consoles. That's pretty cool. That was really popular, I know, on PC, probably still is, but looking at this, it finally moving over to the Xbox should, of course, get a lot of interest there. And then moving up to March 16th, Sid Meier's Civilization 6 cloud, console, and PC. Another good pickup, I'd say, for especially for fans of kind of like the strategy games. Definitely really cool to see that. And then moving to March 21st, Ni no Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom, the Prince's Edition, console and PC. A good RPG getting dropped in, and it includes all of the DLCs that were released. So overall, some pretty good releases into Game Pass for the month of March, with Guilty Gear Strive and Ni no Kuni 2, probably the two big ones I would look towards, but I understand Valheim, a lot of interest there, and obviously Civilization 6. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Halo Infinite and 343. It's been a rough ride so far for 343 with this latest iteration of Halo, but it appears they are getting on track here with the latest release, Season 3, which is out right now. And we can head over here to the page that they released over on news.xbox.com and Halo Waypoint, just kind of going over some of the additions here for the season, as well as talking about the future of Halo Infinite, which we can see this posted up with the maps being Cliffhanger, Chasm, and then the big team battle map Oasis. So I will be checking this season out. I think later on today I'm going to jump in and check out the different mode that they have here, as well as the maps and the battle pass. Escalation Slayer, that's been added. The shroud screen actually looks pretty cool. So it's sort of a dome that you throw out and you can't see through it or any of that. So people can kind of hide in there. It's almost like one big cloak that you can put around your team or your vehicle, as I saw people who were kind of driving through the shroud screen and hitting people who were directly on their side. They couldn't jump out of the way of the Warthog because they just can't see it. Also, a new weapon here. We have the M392 Bandit Rifle. They also have kind of a story or narrative that they've tried to weave into the multiplayer. There's a whole cinematic that'll play when you start it up. And they also have a new battle pass, Spartan Cores, and an event that is currently ongoing. They do have a section here, though, looking forward, where they discuss the future and some of the consistency that they want to achieve. They say, to me, seasonality is really about consistency. We need to be consistent in everything. I feel very confident with where we've gone with Season 3, and I have very strong confidence that we're going to be able to keep improving that consistency and avoid completely the long seasons of the past. That's an understatement. We're going to be more consistent. We're going to continue to evolve the game in close partnership with our players. We're focused on shipping Season 3, and then, as Chief said, we're ready to get back to work. And that's kind of the situation that they've put themselves in, with Halo Infinite being a free-to-play game and compared to games like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Call of Duty Warzone. There's an expectation that seasons will be consistent and launch every 3 to 4 months. This most recent season for Halo Infinite lasted like 10 months or something. It was a long time. So if they're able to get on track here, Season 3 just released in 3 or 4 months. They have the next season, and then maybe they have whatever Tatanka is that Certain Affinity is working on that sounds like it's a battle royale, and that slots in nicely. They could actually get things rolling along for Halo Infinite. Something that had a very difficult and strained beginning could really turn around, and that's what I would like to see for the game overall. But I will be checking out Season 3, again, starting today, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit more on the podcast this weekend. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, when a new generation game system releases, do you sell or trade in the old system, or do you keep it? 8% say I trade it in or I sell it. 26% say it depends on if the new system is backwards compatible. 66% say I keep the old system just in case. I know when I was younger, I would just trade the system in because it would just take off any kind of money from that new system. And that was a big deal at that time. But obviously, as you get older and you're able to buy just items outright rather than wait for a holiday or a birthday or any of that, I understand more and more people will just kind of hold on to their systems, especially knowing what we do now about older platforms currently that end up going up in value, and maybe you want to relive that with your childhood and all of this. So yeah, I personally just hold on to my systems now, but I get it. Some people just say, hey, you know what? I don't think I'm going to be playing this old system like when the next Switch comes out. Am I going to go back and play this older one that will probably feel archaic then? No, not really. So in that case, I get it. You might sell it or trade it in to get the new one. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Celia saying, between the NAND flash and the gamepad with the built-in screen being fragile, complex, or expensive to replace, I feel like the Wii U is going to be tough console to find in working order in years to come. So I do have good news for you with the screen. It's not overly expensive necessarily to replace that LCD. There is work involved. You have to take the gamepad apart, and usually you have to go through like the board and like the plastic skeleton inside to get to that screen. But screens, I think, on eBay are $20 or so. It's not an incredibly expensive venture if you were going to do the labor side yourself. But you have to remember there are people who probably broke the screen on their tablet, just threw it out. So I feel like there are many more consoles out there for the Wii U, like the actual box, as opposed to tablets. And the tablet is probably going to be the portion of the entire thing, the gamepad, that is hard to find or scarce down the road. Think of the GameCube Game Boy Advanced player. The Game Boy Advanced player itself is worth significantly less than the disc, because the disc is more fragile and tend to get even thrown around a bit more, maybe than thrown out. And of course, the Game Boy Advance player is basically useless without that disc unless you get into modifying your system and all of this. So yeah, that would be my concern. It's not even necessarily the console at this point, even though there are some issues with NAND flash. It's that tablet that I think has become very hard to find in 5 or 10 years. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was the Nintendo Switch 2 and the idea of backwards compatibility? Are you expecting it to play all of your current Switch games? And for the sake of argument, if it doesn't, would that be a deal breaker? Then also, what about Sony preparing billions of dollars that they have right now for acquisitions? Do you think they're gonna make any big gaming acquisitions? And then 343 and Halo Infinite, is this finally the point where they get that game on track? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.